Thank you very much, Sam. And it's a pleasure to be with you all today. Truly an honor, and honestly, in these difficult times, it's difficult to bring yourself to have discussions. And obviously, this discussion was initially planned well before recent events, but I think the importance of having these discussions and connecting them to the current situation is very important. Wanted to start by expressing my gratitude for this opportunity despite these difficult times. Al-Haq, as was mentioned, is the first Palestinian human rights organization. Our work has focused on pursuing the right to self-determination for the Palestinian people for more than 40 years now. And the unfortunate reality is we've seen ignoring of international law and the rules and principles that have been established to achieve that right to self-determination, and the indication of the lack of implementation of international law and the consequences therein, I think, are part of what is being manifested today before our very eyes. The impunity that has been enjoyed by Israel over the years has emboldened it more and more, and we see the recent escalation as an opportunity that is being taken advantage of to pursue these broader long-term colonial interests that have started more than 100 years ago and have simply evolved over time, starting with the mandate period and the convergence of Western and Zionist interests to the creation and establishment of the State of Israel, to what we are seeing today. The situation right now in Gaza is one that is really indescribable. So I am at a loss for words to try to give it any sense of, any description that does it justice, because there is really no description that does it justice, because it is really a dire, unbelievable situation that is happening live to the world. And the response from the world is unbelievable. It's something that is really hitting to the core of where the future of international law and its potential value for us as a people in the pursuit of the right to self-determination, being able to use it. The best examples I think I give about how this situation is hitting home is our own staff members that are based in Gaza. Both of them have been displaced from their homes. One of them actually had his home destroyed. And so the only thing we can do is pray for them and everyone being impacted by the situation, and checking every morning just to make sure they're still alive. This is obviously a very difficult situation for everyone, but specifically for those that are undergoing this constant bombardment in Gaza, with thousands that have been killed already, and many more injured and displaced, and this fear of a new Nakba that is developing, and the emboldened nature of the Israeli position with the Western support that is seemingly allowing this genocidal incitement to continue to develop. And I think everyone's watching the news in Gaza and following this pretty closely, it's hard to process all of the information that is coming out there. But I also want to point out that the occupation of Palestine includes not only Gaza, but it also includes the West Bank, including East Jerusalem. And we are also seeing an escalation here in the West Bank as well, with more than 60 killed, I think, so far, and over 700 detained and arrested. It's clear that this is also an opportunity not lost on the Israeli occupation to further interests here in the West Bank, arming settlers, encouraging almost the further escalation of the situation here in the West Bank as well. And this is an important point of ensuring that we don't allow this narrative of this war being, as the media is portraying it, a war between Israel and Hamas. It is very much connected to the broader context of the historical colonization of Palestine and the challenges that the Palestinian people have faced over the years in their struggle for the right to self-determination. And I think the importance of contextualization, even in these difficult situations, is very important, and responsibility on all of your parts to keep that context front and center, so it doesn't get lost in the most recent escalation of hostilities. What I wanted to do, if you don't mind, is to give you a brief presentation that I had planned to give, but maybe it will resonate more actually in light of the current circumstances. If I'm allowed to share my screen.
Yeah, we can see it.
Great. And so the title of my presentation is The Continued Colonization of Palestine Along Business Lines. And it really focuses on this economic incentive structure that that feeds into and perpetuates the continued colonization of Palestine and incentivizes the violations of human rights and international humanitarian law that go hand in hand with this ongoing colonial process. And I think it's important to always see the big picture first when we are looking at any situation, but in the Palestinian context specifically, I think it's important not to just look at it as a binary situation between Israel and Palestine, but step back further and see the broader imperial dimensions of the situation here in Palestine, and the history of colonialism and imperialism in other parts of the world, not just here in the Palestinian context, and then bring it down into the specific colonization of Palestine and the colonial occupation that is ongoing today in occupied Palestinian territory. For historical context, there are a couple of documents that I recommend those of you that are interested in getting deeper in the history to understand the present, which I think is very important. They were actually written by a father and son. The father is Isaac Disraeli, and he wrote a book on the genius of Judaism, which actually took a critical look at the imperial exploitation of Judaism for imperial ends. And Tancred, the New Crusade, which was written by his son Benjamin Disraeli, and this looked specifically at the idea of the utilization of imperial power to further the Zionist project. And there's a page in that book titled Tancred. At the bottom of that page, there's a phrase, it is all is race, there is no other truth. And that is an indication also of the thinking of the Zionist project well before Theodor Herzl. And I think it's important to have that in your background as you understand the development of this situation we're seeing today in a broader historical context. One of the early economic dimensions of the situation in Palestine started with the Suez Canal. and the development of the trade route through the use of that Suez Canal. And with the bankruptcy of the Ottoman Empire, there was a Suez Canal loan, which Benjamin Disraeli, who then became the British Prime Minister, was actually able to secure a loan from the Rothschild Bank to purchase the shares in the Suez Canal Company, thereby creating a stronger strategic interest in the region for the British, in addition to other Western powers that were already involved. Another important dimension historically is the issue of oil. The discovery of oil also created additional strategic interests in the region, Palestine being one of them, with the desire to build a pipeline through what was initially the Turkish Petroleum Company and then became the Iraq Petroleum Company, to build a pipeline from Kirkuk, Iraq to Haifa, Palestine. And over time, different imperial interests were at play, leading to the spread of this, or the branching off of this pipeline into different parts of the region. And if you look at this small illustration and compare it to the conflict that we are seeing in the region as a whole, you see the connection between oil interests in the region and the situation of conflict here as well. There is an important document that I came across in my research on the colonization of Palestine, means and methods. And this was a discussion that was taking place in the mid-1920s, which asked the question, if you can't see the wording clearly here on the page, the question that is asked is, what medium should be employed to colonize a country on a large scale? Should it be done by philanthropy or treated as a business proposition along strict business lines? And that mentality of colonialism and the use of private interests and corporate actors has been a driving force in the continued colonization of Palestine. During the mandate period, there were key focuses on economic areas, which is called the industrial complex by one author, the Haifa harbor, the Dead Sea minerals, and water. And these issues of extractive industry and minerals and water and resources are commonplace in the history of colonialism. The only thing we see different in this colonial endeavor is that it is the Jewish faith that is being exploited for this colonial endeavor. And going more recently to the occupied Palestinian territory, post-1967, one of the first things that was done after the territory was acquired in 1967 was the creation of another company, the Israel Corporation. And the idea was to create a new company that will promote development of basic branches of the economy using normal business practices by providing tax incentives and the like to basically encourage investment in this expanded territory of Palestine that has been acquired, and, as I say, the continued colonization of Palestine. One of the unique things about the situation in Palestine is that Israel has brought in multinational actors to be partners in its colonial project, which is very much connected to the broader imperial dimensions of this situation here. And I mentioned gas as being an important issue in the past. Well, today, or I mentioned oil as being an important issue of the past. Well, today it's gas. And the discovery of natural gas in the Mediterranean has reignited that search for energy and the importance of Palestine in the region. And Israel is very much keen on exploiting that to the greatest extent possible, even at the expense of the Palestinian people, keeping them besieged in Gaza for the last 17 years in order to ensure that exploitation is not hindered. And there are other multinational actors that are also interested in the issue of gas. And if they weren't interested before Russia invaded Ukraine, they are even more interested today. And I think this helps to explain part of the apparent hypocrisy of the positions of the West vis-a-vis Ukraine and Russia, as opposed to Israel's treatment of the Palestinian people. Another issue of natural resources is the stone and the quarry industry. And we see how the wall separates Palestinians from their land and at the same time exploits that land through these quarries to construct settlements on Palestinian land, while at the same time Palestinians are denied the ability to develop their own, utilize their own resources and develop their land. And you can see from this example how those resources are being depleted, and Palestinians are barely benefiting from these exploits. The minerals of the Dead Sea are another example of the resources that have been exploited over the years, and you see this very clearly in satellite imagery of how that exploitation has had an impact on the Dead Sea as a whole over the years. And I call this the elements of occupation because each one of these minerals, these elements have an economic dimension to it. And so you can imagine the value of each one of these and how there's a benefit that is being reaped as a result of it. I have this diagram here. It's available online as well, but I put it out there just to give you a sense of the intricate and complex nature of the situation here and how Israel exploits all the different resources, whether it's people and property, and all of them feeding in to this Israeli economy of settler colonialism, and very much connected to its broader economic interests in various sectors. And you see the people being exploited in one form through coerced or cheap labor in a captive market, or even subjects of research and development, where Israel is able to test out its technology and weapons at the expense of the Palestinian people, but also how it exploits Palestinian resources from air to the sea. And two other dimensions are the external pillars of support, which the international community plays a role through the ideological and charitable support, trade, investment, military aid, all these things coming together that create this, what I call the architecture of exploitation, and reflect Israel's refinement of the best business practice of colonialism. One example of these companies that are involved in this colonial project in Palestine has been reflected in a UN database that was established to collect information on business activities in the settlements. And it doesn't do justice to the broader scope of corporate involvement, because there are a lot more corporate actors, but it is an example of these different corporate actors and the areas that they're involved in. Here you see companies that are involved in infrastructure or resource extraction, surveillance, construction, finance, and many other violations. And I think it is these connections between the corporate interests and profit and the impacts that is happening on the people that take us into this broader issue of understanding the concept of people being put or profits being put before people on a much more global scale, and recognizing how Palestine and the injustices facing the Palestinian people are just a microcosm of global injustices facing people around the world. And so I'll close with something to get you thinking about the importance of seeing things in a more holistic manner, all the different variables involved in trying to solve for Palestine, and seeing that this isn't a purely mathematical equation, it's more artistic than anything, but giving you an idea of the different variables that we need to appreciate and take into consideration and see how they interconnect in order to really be able to address the situation and see it in the holistic context that it needs to be seen in. And so I'll be closing with a question to you about what is it that you can do. And I think recognizing your role within the system you live in, and that system can be defined whether it's geographically or institutionally, but you as an individual play a role in any particular system, and that role can have an impact on other systems nearby. And understanding those connections can help us move things forward. Each one of our individual actions contributes to a positive movement. And even though each individual action alone may not move the system, the cumulative effect of positive actions by individuals throughout the system can lead eventually to change. And that's the hope that we have that drives our work, with the hope that the current system can be changed if it requires dismantling the existing status quo and rebuilding a more just and fair system. Then we have faith in humanity to be able to do so. And so I'll stop there with my presentation and then turn it over to you to address any questions you might have.
Yes. First of all, thank you so much for that enlightening and very enlightening presentation. I will request the PowerPoint, if that's okay, later on and share it maybe with all those who asked for it. So we understand part of the lack of implementation of international law is due to certain gains that people have with Israeli colonization. It's part of a larger paradigm matrix of imperialism, of coloniality. How best do we do advocacy then? What is the best way we can now advocate for justice?
Well, the question goes to you as individuals, depending on where you are in a particular situation. And I'll give you a practical example of something we had high hopes for, but didn't succeed. There was an initiative in Europe. It's called the European Citizens Initiative, which was aimed at banning settlement products in the EU market. And this was a struggle in and of itself to get it to that point where it was proposed as an EU Citizens Initiative. But in order for it to reach the next step, it required 1 million signatures of a threshold of EU citizens in different countries. And the unfortunate reality is that even though we had a year to garner those 1 million signatures, we were only able to garner, I think, less than 30% of that, 260, 270,000 signatures. And so this is one example where the opportunity of cumulative effect by a collection of individuals, each one putting their individual signature to something that could move things forward, did not succeed. That doesn't mean we give up on the process and we continue to develop other avenues to pursue that same end, because we definitely believe that so long as there's economic benefit coming from the settlement enterprise, that it would only encourage that behavior to continue. But the issue, I think, raises some additional concerns in terms of how much faith we can have on people to act on their own, and how much we have to encourage them to act. And this is where you as an individual may be willing to make that decision to sign the initiative, but are you willing to speak to others to encourage them to do so? And so this is an example of the importance of recognizing what you can do as an individual, how you can influence those around you first and foremost, and then work outside of that and see how your role in a particular system can influence others. But we take lessons from the European Citizens Initiative that we can't just simply put a call out and expect everyone to take action. Advocacy is more long-term and requires a concerted effort to achieve those long-term goals. It's not going to be easy. It is an uphill battle for sure.
There's two questions I'll ask from the chat. The first one is, where does Al-Haq work with the International Criminal Court? And specifically, if you can speak about your activity now of the recent events. And if you could give a comment about the impact of BDS on Israeli economy. Is there really an impact today?
First, with regard to the issue of the International Criminal Court, this is one of those institutions that have been created that are supposed to provide an opportunity for justice and apply international law. And we've already been very disappointed in its lack of attention to Palestine and the reaction with the most recent atrocities that are being committed against the Palestinian people, which runs in stark contrast to the response of the ICC when it came to Russia and Ukraine. That being said, it is one of those mechanisms in the international system which we have to engage with. We can't simply criticize it from afar. Part of the change needs to come by engaging from within, but also advocating from outside to change the system more holistically as well, and to not allow these institutions to be simply tools for imperial ends. And that's why we continue to engage in these mechanisms and try to push them. Either we expose their hypocrisy or we force change over time, whether it's from the inside out or outside in. With regard to BDS, obviously it is a very important movement that has had significant, I think, impact in raising awareness of the Palestinian situation, and in particular, the role of that individuals can play. The empirical data of the economic impact is not one that I am able to comment on, but what I do think Israel fears the most is the awakening of consciousness that develops when people look within themselves as individuals and ask themselves, what is it that I can do? And this is why I think it is it's so important that the role of the individual continue to be questioned, rather than watch on the screen and say how awful the situation is. Ask yourselves as individuals, what is it that I can do? What impact can I have? And as I said, each one of us individually may not make a huge impact, but it is that cumulative effect. And that cumulative effect of the awakening of consciousness, I think, is what Israel fears the most. Over time, that generations, the younger generation today will be in positions to make decisions that have a tangible impact on the situation. And that's why they are trying very hard to prevent even the discussion from taking place in many countries where you see motions being passed that prevent BDS from being put forward as an issue or a position that can be taken even. And so these are individual challenges that need to be taken on a collective level, but each one in their own locales, whether it's at a state level or a national level, depending on where you are in the world.
And you mentioned in your presentation about how we should avoid the dichotomy of Israel-Palestine, but also understand the larger paradigm, the larger matrix of colonialism, of imperialism. How does Israel play a role as a colonial power in exploitation of other global South nations / peoples?
Well, I think the closest parallel I draw is from that same document that I put forward, titled The Colonization of Palestine, Means and Methods. Within that document, it goes further on to draw on the examples of the British South Africa Company, which was established by Cecil Rhodes in the 1800s. And if you know the legacy of Cecil Rhodes and the legacy of colonialism, you see the impact of that colonial mindset in Africa being reflected here in Palestine. And as we dig deeper and we see these broader connections of corporate actors like the British East India Company, for example, and the history of colonialism throughout much of the global South, where corporate actors have been involved, it has been a constant push to put profits over people, and very much those profits focus more on the global North, whereas the global South is the one that is serving as the source of those natural resources and those that are being exploited. And so you see it in the Palestinian context on a much more micro level here, but many of the same issues that are facing the Palestinian people can be replicated and applied in other parts of the world, especially where there's a legacy of colonialism and imperialism.
We have another question here that I think is important. Zionism is defined as a settler colonial movement, not just mere a colonial movement. Can you speak about the difference between how Zionism has tried to settle in a different country, in a different land than their own, an indigenous land inhabited, and on resources? It's far more than a colonial enterprise. That's what they're saying in the chat. Could you comment?
Yes. And colonialism takes different forms. In some cases, it's purely exploitative. In some cases, it is settler in nature, where there's an intent to replace the indigenous population. And so we see examples of settler colonialism in North America and Australia, and in Palestine, where there is an intent to replace the existing indigenous population. I like to say that Israel has refined colonialism and taken those different historical dimensions and developed it into a best business practice of colonialism, where the settlers are an integral part of the broader Zionist project, and the economic incentivization of their settlement is very important. And multinational interest in the exploitation of that settlement enterprise feeds into that broader project. And a lot of settlers are here because of the economic incentives that are provided for them, which feed into this broader settlement enterprise. But the key distinction of the different forms of colonialism and settler colonialism is this intent at replacement of the population.
There's a few comments on the chat mentioning, climate activists, very other different protesters in the UK. This is another advocacy and strategy question, I guess, is how best can we unite for those who are marginalized by imperial powers, by colonial powers, in our movement for justice? How can we make it more transnational? And if it's already been done, what is being done that is connecting it to other struggles around the world?
Yeah, well, I mean, justice and the progress for justice anywhere in the world is a progress for everyone. And I think, having these different issues, say in the UK, looking at the issue of the history of colonialism and reparations, these are questions of justice that may not directly apply to Palestine, but indirectly in a more holistic manner, definitely lay the groundwork for the importance of redressing past atrocities and ensuring that those that commit them don't get away with them and continue to benefit from them. And so I think whereas those that are working for Palestinian rights need to be aware also of those connections, and help those working on other issues of social justice to achieve their goals, will also be benefiting the Palestinian struggle, and vice versa. Those that are seeking justice in their particular context that might not be connected to Palestine specifically, seeing the connection between the Palestinian struggle and injustice as a whole, and making those connections is very important.
we see that countries like India and Israel are doing arm deals. We see we see that the arms industry complex of Israel is one of its most profitable. And one of its trademarks of why it's so profitable is that it's war tested. It's tested on people, so people can see how it works. Currently, right now in the situation in Gaza, in your perspective, I know it's only been 10 days, 11 days. Are you seeing the imperial, capitalistic, colonial powers that are gaining profit from what's going on right now in Gaza? Is that too early to claim?
I think it's too early to measure, but I think we are seeing very much whether it's even from an economic standpoint, the expansion of munitions is part of the broader imperial military-industrial complex, where the use of arms is something that needs to be replenished, thereby creating economic incentives. And I think if you look at the stock values of some of the key military or defense technologies, you will see that play out in real time, unfortunately. But we have historically seen how Israel has marketed its experience in attacks against Palestinians and the testing of new technology and weapons, and then taking that abroad. And so, you know, I don't want to say that I expect it to happen again, because I'm hoping that despite the difficult situation we are seeing today, that this will be a wake-up call, that we can't continue to have the same status quo and allow things to continue in the way that they have been. Because if you reward this kind of behavior, you're only going to encourage its repetition. And I'm hopeful, if anything comes out of all the death and destruction we are seeing, is a change in how the world and humanity sees the current situation and what it's going to do to get out of it.
I'm going to ask one more question from the chat, and I do apologize if I've missed others, but Wissam is a busy person and he has a place to go and attend to after this. Yes, the next question is regarding the neighboring Arab countries. We see different accords being the Abraham Accords, different economic bonds. What do you think is more hindering the Palestinian freedom? Is it more the interest of corporate profits, or is it the bias of Western media that's trying to diminish the Palestinian people?
I don't think it's an either or, and I am keen not to say which one is having a greater impact, but it is a cumulative effect of these kind of interests that I mentioned, whether it's economic interests or ideological interests, that all come together. And that's why I go back to my initial question to you about your role. I don't expect those that are working in the cultural sphere of the system to be to have the most impact on the political sphere of the system, working in that cultural dimension, working in the economic dimension, working in the political dimension. You have specific skill sets and areas where your energy is going to be most useful. And I think ensuring that you can influence, whether it's the media, whether it's economic decision-making, whether it's political decision-making, all of these things are important and they all connect. The question is, where is it that you are going to have the most impact? Depends on where you are in a particular part of the system. And it requires you doing your own research and understanding the connection that you have to your system and how it impacts others along the way as well.
Just before you go, and we enter into a time of action, which we'll be doing in 1 or 2 minutes or so. Could you any last remarks, any last comments you would like to leave with us?
Just to say thank you very much for the opportunity, and I hope that the discussion was useful to you. I think one of the greatest joys I get in this position I'm in is being able to speak with groups like yourselves, because I do believe in the power of the individual, and I feel like every one of you has an opportunity to do something that will have a positive impact, and over time there will be a cumulative impact in a positive direction for change. Thank you very much. So I'll be stepping out and leaving you to the rest of your meeting. Take care. Salam.
And thank you all for being committed throughout the past years, being dedicated members of Sabil, and especially within the Kumi community. The logic of starting Kumi is, in Palestinian liberation theology, we support inclusivity, we support justice, and we support nonviolence. Kumi, we envisioned Kumi as a place where we bring many people, civil society organizations, people who are committed for nonviolent actions, regardless of their backgrounds and their identities, to come and advocate for just causes through nonviolent actions. Kumi is our intention for it to be a platform where many people who believe only in nonviolence and strongly in nonviolence, that would come together and we start to put pressure on the decision makers. Sadly, the situation has never been as violent as it has been the past week in Palestine and Israel. Israelis are claiming, or I mean it's announcing and reporting that the violence has never against Jews has never been as strong as it used to be. The last time it was so powerful, it was during the time of the Holocaust. And for us Palestinians, in the past week, we had more people die than the second Intifada, 5 times as much as the first Intifada. And the military operation in Gaza has not started yet. So we're expecting things to become much worse. There's tens of thousands of people who are injured. Some of them, unfortunately, will not be able to recover. One of the main issues of nonviolent actions is to challenge the decision makers. And the first group, we're already compiling lists of actions that are required by activists and organizations, similar like-minded people, on what we can do. So if you come across certain actions, please do share this information with us. But currently, there is a lot of pressure that is taking place on the EU. In the EU, unlike the US and Canada, at least the EU has its official position that there's an occupation. They acknowledge the existence of the occupation and they stand against the annexation of East Jerusalem and against the building of settlements. So at least on the theory, on the paperwork, they have it right to a certain extent. Now, after October 7th, we see plenty of decision makers in the EU trying to shift from this position. So there are groups of people who are advocating on remaining strong on international law, and others who are becoming less excited about international law, although their positions have been very clear when it came to the situation with Russia invading Ukraine. So it's very clear double standards. Ryan, if you may share the screen with the action of this week. So we're asking you, we're writing to you like talking points. So please write an email. It doesn't have to be a long email. Just make it as a personalized email. The purpose of this, we want them to answer each email. So we want you to send a positive email. We wish that you would send a positive email to the people who are standing, especially Borrell, who is Josep Borrell, who is standing, who's making, I mean, it's at least a decent position. And we would like you to also to condemn the claims of Ursula, who she made them without the consultation of the European Union. So Ryan, is it possible to share the screen? So why we don't want to write an email and just ask you to send the email, because we don't want their algorithms to catch it and throw it all in the spam. We'd like them to respond email by email. So for the positive email, just say thank you as a subject, title subject, because we don't want to overwhelm the people who are doing a good work. And the people who are doing less of a good work, especially Ursula, please be creative with the title. So we appreciate please do as a minimum one of the two questions if you feel like you're a positive person and you just want to thank the people who are doing a good job. But we'd appreciate sending both emails. Please make sure that you copy the emails that we have, the assistance of Ursula. Ursula has 2 emails and the rest of the emails. Yes, can we make it bigger, the screen? Yes, thank you so much. But we will have them in the chat, and we're going to be sending all of this information on Telegram, because we're sure that we're going to have email problems already. Our Facebook pages and other media or social media is under attack. We'd also encourage you, if you're part of a church and the church is praying for peace in Palestine and they want to do something in addition to prayers, we encourage them to do these actions. We're going to be posting daily actions and weekly actions. All of these actions, we will make sure that they will not take more than a couple of minutes or 5 minutes of your time. It's overwhelming, the videos that we're getting from Gaza and other places in the country with the levels that are coming up. We need to make sure that we stand together. So I know it's always, even 5 minutes are difficult to find during these times, but please let us so we're going to work together. I think the energy is positive if we just write an email all together now and express to our concerns to both to Ursula and Josep Borrell. So we'll give you 5 minutes to write emails.